Welcome to Expired Musings podcast. My name is Ragad.
And my name is Aman, and this is where all our thoughts go to die. Oh.
So have fun.
Please do. Please have fun. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Welcome back, ladies and gents. How are you guys doing?
Thanks for coming back.
Yeah, we sure miss you around here. The nights have been lonely without you.
Enough, Minshan. Allah, enough.
I'm so sorry. These intros are getting more and more delirious each time.
It's because we've been recording later and later each time.
The later that we record, the wackier we end up being. Anyways, welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. I really hope you enjoyed last week's episode, The Good, the Bad, and Ugly. That was a really good idea that Rakat came up with. And we've had actually a lot of feedback about how Riverdale and Pretty Little Liars is apparently on many people's lists. And I'm so sorry to everybody about the waste of time.
It has a cult following, so I'm not surprised.
Right. Okay, so today's episode is another one of Rad's ideas. And I'm saying this just in case you guys hate them, you know who to blame.
How dare you? First of all, actually give me all the credit so when people love it, they'll be like, wow, Ragad's the genius behind the voice.
She is not, okay? Ragat comes up with the ideas. I do the execution, honey. I do the research. Listen, I'm the academic here.
Oh, now you want to jump in. 5 seconds ago, it was all me. What's your problem? What's your damage?
So sorry. I'm a very confused individual. Anyway, so let's not waste any more time, shall we? So today, our episode is titled The 7 Deadly Sins. Very straightforward. Basically, what we're going to do in this episode is Ragad and I are going to individually, but discuss them together, rate the 7 deadly sins from the least sinful to the most sinful. We're going to add a disclaimer here that this episode is purely for entertainment. We are not trying to affiliate any of this content to a religion, which obviously the 7 deadly sins originate from Christianity, of course. But this episode is not going to be religious at all. We're just doing this for fun. And because the 7 deadly sins have kind of become part of pop culture, right?
The way that we're looking at it isn't necessarily like as a sin that you're going to go to hell for, but more like faults, within humankind, within our own personality, within our own character trait. These sins all sort of exist within us, and we just thought it would be fun to explore that. So it's been seen in multiple, media references, in multiple shows, and, there's just something cool about them. I don't know what else to go on about.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something very intriguing about the 7 deadly sins. That's why they've been the premise of so much content. They're, kind of spooky and kind of a dark look into the human psyche. They're really fun, I think, to explore. So yeah. So Ragat, we were just discussing this before the episode about creative content that we've seen that has used the premise of the 7 deadly sins, and Ragat and I both have one. Ragat, talk about yours for a second.
Great. So I'm gonna start it off with an anime that, one of the top best animes to ever exist. Feel free to disagree, you're wrong, but it's called Full Metal Alchemist, particularly Brotherhood. Not that it matters for this context, but this whole series is based off of the 7 deadly sins. And there's multiple animes that have this premise as well, but particularly for this one, each sin comes in the form of a human, and that human portrays that sin very physically, and it's part of their characteristic trait, it's part of their abilities, and they basically try to tackle down the main protagonist. So it's just very interesting to kind of see these sins as humans and how they're manifested into the real world with this sort of stuff.
Yeah. I'm not an anime girl because I have friends. I'm cool.
Yeah, 20 minutes ago, you were stuck watching Jaws, so I don't want to hear this.
Jaws is a masterpiece. How dare you, you fool. Speaking of Jaws, where I think my first interaction, I could say, with the 7 deadly sins was in the excellent movie 7. I think everybody who knows Seven knows that it's probably the first thing you think about when you think about the seven deadly sins. So the film Seven is based on a serial killer who kills victims based on their own sin. But what he does is he kind of, it's like imagine finding somebody who, for example, like Gluttony, for example, somebody who eats a lot, he would kill them by force feeding them until they become like morbidly obese and then they die in their bed like choking on food. You know what I mean? Like that was his thing, is finding the sin and taking it to the extreme. And that film was excellent. It's, what's in the box? What's in the box? That's where that came from. I would strongly suggest that and Full Metal. What is it? Metal Alchemist? Is that how you said?
Yeah, Brotherhood.
Yeah, definitely. You guys should definitely give them a watch, and you get to explore the seven deadly sins.
I think we should start it off with explaining and stating what the seven deadly sins are. So, may I?
Yes, you may.
Okay. Jeez, give me something. Okay. So I'm just going to start off by listing and defining the seven deadly sins as we go along. We're going to start off with lust. Lust is the strong passion or longing, especially for sexual desires.
Disc.
Same, you know my name. There is gluttony. Gluttony is an excessive and ongoing eating of food or drink. It can also be viewed as, just consuming, constant consumption. There is greed, which is an excessive pursuit of material goods. The difference between gluttony and greed, which you might find, is with greed, it's more of hoarding, wealth and items, whereas gluttony is more consuming. There is sloth, which is an excessive laziness or the failure to act and utilize one's talents. Wrath, which is a strong anger and hate towards another person. Envy, which is an intense desire to have an item that someone else possesses. And last but not least, pride. Pride is an excessive view of oneself without regard for others. And some have stated that pride is the root of all the seven deadly sins, because without pride, these sins wouldn't have manifested. So we're going to rearrange that.
Thank you, Rod. Yeah. So well said. Basically, what we're going to do here is we're going to number them from 7 all the way to 1, 7 being the least sinful, obviously in this context, to the most sinful. Now, before we get started, I teased this to Rod before we started. I actually have a small anecdote that relates to the 7 deadly sins that I think is a little bit funny. Okay, so wait, let me get comfortable for this. Okay, picture this. Grade 10 me. I got thick ass bangs and the body of a 10-year-old still. Okay? I had taken drama class that's actually like grade 11 drama. So we get this really cool assignment where we have to pick a deadly sin out of a hat. And the sin that you pick, we had to make a really intricate mask, a full face mask. Like imagine like a helmet that goes over your face all the way down to your neck, representing that sin. And it was done so that you can kind of like express yourself in an artsy fartsy way. And it was to see how creative people can get. So our teacher, he taught us how to make the masks. What you do is you get like a newspaper or something, and then you wrap it around the head. So then you make the base of your skull. And then you get some masking tape or like duct tape, and then you go around it all the way around until you make sure that you cover all areas that you have already measured with that duct tape.
I'm sorry, this sounds like suffocation waiting to happen. Don't they tell you not to put your head in these sorts of situations?
Literally, y'all, it was a pain in the ass, okay? We had to sit there while like a fellow student tapes your goddamn head with some duct tape. So after all that, it's a long ass process. You like have to do normal tape and then duct tape and then like it was like 3 layers basically at the end. And then you get some sort of like head shape. And then after that, you would paint it and add decorations or whatever. You have to make ears, you make ears. If you want to make horns, you make horns, whatever. Okay? So I have always had a problem with procrastinating. Okay? I'm not proud of this, but I just don't get shit done on time. Okay? Especially back then. I'm much better now. And I'm really bad at art. Notoriously, I am like infamously terrible. I can't do anything. My hands are futile.
We can tell. If you've ever seen an ugly post on our Instagram feed, just know it was all her.
I'm upset by that. That was uncalled for and it was cruel. I'm trying my best. Listen, it's not my forte, okay? I'm a pretty girl, but I can't make pretty things.
Wow, look whose pitch has gone off the charts. For once, the roles are reversed.
Who the hell do you think you are? Anyways, disregarding that rude comment. So I have a partner, and she was a little bit incompetent, to be honest. Looking back, she wasn't great. And I get the head done, the bit with like the newspaper done, and I have it taped, but I don't have anything else. Like I'm supposed to have two other layers on so that I can paint it. And I go home and it's due the next day. And I panic, right? I'm like, shit, like I'm supposed to have this painted and then decorated. So I'm panicking. Oh, by the way, I forgot to say, I pulled out Gluttony. I forgot to say the most important part. And I was like, of course I would get Gluttony, the ugliest one of them all.
Truly.
Truly. This happens to me a lot. This happened to me a lot in my academic career where I would be in like a sticky situation and then I'll be always innovative enough to do something that would get me to catch up quickly. Like that's my thing. I always wing it and it almost always works. And this was one of those situations where it did work. So what I did is I was looking at my little mask and I was like, Gluttony. So when you think about gluttony, a lot of times you think about words that people use, right? And pig is a big one, right? Like you're being a pig. Pigs are seen as gluttonous. So I was like, okay, a pig, that's a classic. So then what I did is I opened up my bag from that Halloween where there was a bunch of uneaten candy that I hated that I thought was disgusting. And I took the candy wrappers and I stuck them all over the head. So it was covered in candy wrappers. And then I took some candies and placed them around. And then I cut out a snout. I put the snout, and then I did like the little holes for the snout. I used two black candies. It was gorgeous.
Oh.
It turned out so good. And I did it, by the way, all this, like I used like a hot glue gun. I got it done in like half an hour.
Oh my god.
So I go to class the next day and people come in with these beautifully painted masks, like really elaborate. And I'm like, oh shit, I'm finna fail. And I walk in, I'm like, this is not gonna go well.
Wait. This girl really thought she could glue some garbage on a helmet and she'll get her A. Meanwhile, people have handcrafted like beautiful designs, are truly artistic. You're surprised?
Yeah, of course I was surprised. How dare you? I didn't think people really put their back into it like that. So, anyways, I pull out my mask. People start noticing it. They're like, "Whoa, that's so cool!" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm not exaggerating." People started like coming around me and being like, "Whoa, that's so innovative. That's so cool. How'd you think about that?" And I was like, "I just can't help myself. I'm just, I'm the modern Michelangelo. What can I say?" And I get all this attention. I absolutely got an A. I got an A plus on that class. And here's the thing: I took the class the next year, and we're like the last week of school, and I went to Mr. Maritain. I was like, "I have to confess my crimes," and he's like, "What?" And I'm like, "Listen, I didn't finish it and I pulled that shit in like an hour." And he's like, "Oh, man, like I could tell, like I'm not an idiot." He's like, "I knew," but he's like, "It was still cool. So you deserve the A." But he's like, "You know what happened once you gave me that mask?" Because he like put them up on a shelf and I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, we got like a rat infestation after that?"
Wait. Oh my god. You.
Yeah, so I remember that year there was a problem with rats in that area of the school, and I had no idea why. It was me. They ate the rats. They found my mask and they ate the candy.
Wait, you were the reason. For the longest time, I remember seeing a rat in my like neighbor's locker, and I thought, I'm like, ugh, they're disgusting. What imbeciles! Horrible hygiene. Little did we all know, it's because of your stupid garbage helmet.
I'm so sorry, everybody. Yeah, there was a rat infestation in school because of me. You know what? She got her A. It is what it is. I'm sorry.
Oh my god, that's too funny.
I thought that story would give you a bit of a laugh and it'd be a good introduction.
I actually think it would have been more fitting if you just got Sloth and just called it a day, and then just showed up as yourself.
First of all, how dare you? Second of all, I think it was a 2-in-1. I portrayed the gluttony and being a sloth at the same time. Like, I'm dynamic. You have no idea. Listen, I'm in 3D, honey. You're one-dimensional, sweetie. You have no idea.
Yeah, you sure got the two worst traits and thrived in them.
Anyways, I hope that little detour didn't take too long. But I thought it'd be a funny story because I'm a funny person. Anyways, back to business.
Right. Okay.
We have explained the premise, so we are going to start with number 7.
Okay, so what we're basically going to be doing is I'm going to say what I think number 7 should be, and Amanda's going to say what she thinks number 7 should be, and then we're going to discuss why or why not that doesn't fit in that place.
Awesome. All right, Arad. My number 7 is envy. What's yours?
Sloth.
Wow, interesting.
Yes, I'm gonna have to fight hard for this one because I think envy is a lot higher, lot higher on the totem pole here, whereas sloth, this is how I see it, right? Sloth is associated with laziness, with procrastination. A lot of these things just sort of affect you personally and not so much other people. It's not so much malicious or ill-intentioned. It's just you being a piece of shit sometimes and not following through with your responsibilities. So what's your reason for it?
I, for the life of me, cannot see envy as being destructive. I see it as being maybe a weakness. I just see it as jealousy. And for the life of me, I can't see why jealousy would be destructive. I think it would be unfortunate. It's not great, but I just can't get behind. I don't see the big idea. I don't.
I think with envy, I thought it was going to be a lot higher because it's a lot more malicious. It's very, you don't want others to be happy. And you can think of it when you meet an envious person, immediately it's just bad vibes right off the bat. It's almost like you can think of it like in, I guess, like, okay, I'm going to pull off the Islamic card here with Hasad, for example. So, what Hasad is, it's known in multiple cultures and religions as like the evil eye, right? And people, whether you believe it or not, have stated that they felt the effects of the evil eye. So whether that's losing their homes, whether that's having a breakup, whatever. Some people just attribute it to that. And I'm not here to say whether that's true or not, but I am going to say that with envy, it's a lot more malicious and it has more evil rooted intention.
Right, I guess that's a good argument for it. But I don't know why. From a personal point of view, maybe I haven't really experienced jealousy much in my life. I haven't experienced people be jealous of me, and I haven't been jealous of a lot of people. So for me, it's very much an abstract idea still, and maybe that's why I don't view it as being as bad as it is for you or other people because I don't really understand it. I think I don't grasp it. So maybe that's just it.
So why don't you think that sloth would fit on the lowest?
So here's what we can do. How about we jump to the next one?
Sure.
So my number 6 is sloth, and it's for the reasons that you said, right? It's like a personal struggle, but the reason that I didn't put it last is because maybe sloth is something that I've experienced. I've obviously experienced procrastination and being lazy. So for me, I'm like, yeah, it's like a personal issue. It's not destructive. But envy just falls behind that is because I've never experienced envy at all or hardly. So it doesn't make any sense to me. I have experienced being a sloth, but I know that it's personal, and that's why I ranked it as number 6. What about you?
For me, number 6 was actually lust. And I don't know. I feel like that can kind of go either way, but I see lust in a lot in our society right now. Not to sound like super woke or whatever, but I feel like lust is the reason for a lot of relationship breakups. And if you look at, the age of social media now, everything's super hypersexualized, particularly, I mean, men and women, right? But I feel like lust has completely taken over, our day-to-day lives, especially with like infatuation versus are you really in love with somebody? And when you're infatuated, you have all these expectations coming into a relationship. You might not stay faithful, you might start to cheat. It's just toxic behavior at the end of the day. I've actually seen so many Twitter posts, and maybe I'm, I don't know, like some people like to call this insecure or whatever, but the way I see it, when you're in a relationship, each person is owed some level of respect. So I've seen a lot of threads where these girls are like, oh, like, should I be worried if like my significant other is liking half naked pictures of other girls on social media? And everybody in the comments always calls her insecure. They're always like, you should be confident in your relationship. That shit doesn't matter. But that's something that I see so disrespectful. And especially when it's a serious relationship, I feel like the best way to put it is imagine your parents. Imagine your dad on his phone liking half naked pictures on the dinner table. Is that okay?
I'm gonna barf. I'm gonna barf. I just had to take a minute to barf. Gross. Ew.
I think that's the best way to put it because nobody's really understanding the grasp of how serious it can affect your relationship down the line, especially the expectations now he's going to put on you and then just wandering eyes in general. You're going to be miserable. So that's why I find it like to be not the least effective sin, but it is, something that affects you on a micro scale.
That's interesting. This is going to be so interesting. Okay, I strongly advise people to actually rank your seven deadly sins because it's oddly very personal. Ragan and I viewed this in a very different way, and I'm really excited to kind of explore that because moving on to the next one, I put lust
Wow.
as my number 5, but for different reasons.
Mhm.
I didn't even think about the way you said it, which is what I guess most people would view lust as right now is the commodification of lust, right? Sex sells. Absolutely. That's been extremely dangerous, especially towards women. The reason I view lust as sinful, but not as sinful, is because lust is natural, like a lot of these sins. Lust is human nature to an extent. What scares me about lust, why I think it would possibly be sinful, is when it's weaponized. So, for example, somebody's sex appeal or somebody's lust to another person becomes a reason why you would assume ownership over a person's body. That's how I viewed it. Is like kind of things like sexual harassment from the everyday common cat whistling or to the extent of being harassed at work, and that's where I viewed lust as it's yeah, sure, it's natural. We're humans and we want to procreate and we're attracted to one another, but not on the expense of another human being's like a bodily autonomy. So that's why I viewed lust as sinful, but also kind of natural, right?
That's so interesting. So you saw it more as an objectifying from that point of view, and you saw it more as an action than just a feeling.
Yes, exactly. My problem with lust is when it's being, like, again, weaponized, used, when it's put into action. While you viewed it as something that is consistently in our society, an ongoing issue everywhere. That's really cool. Well, then what's your number 5 then?
Anger and, or sorry, I know you get peeved at this. Wrath. I get it. Uh,
Thank you.
she literally had to like pull me aside midway through the podcast earlier, like, "Ragad, it's not anger, it's wrath." Well, you illiterate buffoon.
Period. Don't you dare going around saying it's anger. What are you, 12? It's wrath, you imbeciles, with a W at the beginning.
Ugh, okay. Anyways, so I picked anger because the way that I viewed anger, like, yes, you can view it on a national scale and, murder and abuse and all that when you're not containing your patience. But when I think of anger, I think of how it kind of corrupts the soul in a way. So when you're constantly angry, that has to like limit any sort of other emotions in your life. I feel like anger is the one thing, or sorry, wrath is the one thing that dominates over all the other emotions that you might be experiencing. So even if you have like love or sadness, anger and wrath somehow supersedes it. Like you can think of yourself in a situation where you're hurt. Let's say somebody you love passed away. Isn't it the 7 stages of grief? Doesn't anger go up pretty high on that? Like I think after like denial, it's anger, then depression, then all of that. So our natural instinct is to get angry. And when we can't control that, I think that starts to erode any sort of like compassion or kindness you might have towards another human being. And I think that kind of goes against our very purpose. When you're living in a community or when you're living among other humans, you need to learn how to get along. You need to, establish some sort of relations with them. And anger is the one thing that cuts all ties.
Again, I'm going to argue that point. For me, I ranked wrath much higher, and it's for your purposes but multiplied. And we'll get to that in a bit, but I, for some reason, cannot overlook these sins on a global scale, the effect that they have on our very existence. And that's why I feel like anger, which we'll get to later, is so heinous, truly heinous. But I guess you view it as heinous as well.
Yeah, so I see it as heinous, and also I think of it that it can be very blinding to, your everyday decisions. When you're in the heat of the moment, you are going to pick the most self-serving decision rather than for the greater good or for, considering the feelings of others. You are going to have a very skewed outlook on what's best to do in that sort of situation. And for that, you'll just kind of find yourself in a pit hole that's really hard to climb out of after. So I do find it bad, but I'm interested to see your global reasoning later on. All right, so what's your 4th then?
Yeah, my 4th is pride. Is yours pride too?
Yeah, exactly. Wow, look at us. Finally, an
Why is that exciting? We never agree on anything. I think that's why we're excited. I'm going to tell you my point of view on pride. Here's my bone to pick with pride. Here's my exact reasoning for its position. It can be destructive, but it's also necessary. Yes. So, for example, I am definitely a very prideful person, and having pride requires you to perhaps put yourself first in multiple situations, which is really good. It can be very good. Putting yourself first, taking care of yourself before you do anything else is vital for your survival. But my issue with pride is that it can quickly become a lack of empathy and you can become apathetic. It can disconnect you from other people. When you become so prideful, you become so self indulged that it eventually becomes you against the world. And that's not how humanity operates. Even though it's good and natural to care about yourself, it's also unnatural to be so prideful that you disconnect yourself from others because humans are built to be in communities. So the way I view it is pride is something that we see a lot all the time. And sometimes I feel like in modern society, pride is sometimes colored as being self-love or self-confidence, which are two things that are beautiful and necessary, but can be easily corrupted. Self-love does not mean you stop having respect for others or your world becomes all about you and what you need. And confidence does not mean that you are untouchable and that you don't deserve criticism like anybody else when necessary. So that's what I think about pride. I'm really curious to know what you have to say to tell me.
So, I actually just want to touch on one of the points that you mentioned about self love and self acceptance and how it can become skewed and corrupt very quickly. So, there was this one section on Twitter, and this was like fairly recent, I would say, where people would practice self love, but in the most extreme sense. So, their version of it is, oh, this person disagrees with you, this person wants to have some sort of wants to depend on you, wants to maybe, have you as an emotional support, drop them. If they're not good for your mental health, drop them. Don't even question it. If it's, a friend of 20 years, who cares? They're out the door. And it's so selfish. It's so self involved to think that other people's feelings don't matter above your own, which, okay, don't get me wrong. I'm very much for numero uno. People should put themselves first in all situations because at the end of the day, you have to look out for yourself. However, I do think that there's limits. You can put yourself first without being selfish all the time. You can put others with you, especially when it comes to family. Like, so many people, they'd be like, yeah, I got into an argument with my sister. And then the comments would be like, oh, drop her. She's toxic. Ma'am, that's my blood. Are you crazy? Like, it doesn't make sense to me.
Exactly relating to that. So remember how I talked about this before, and people that know me know my feelings about this. I hate individualism. Like I hate individualistic societies. And when I hear this rhetoric of you don't owe anybody anything, that is not accurate. We owe people kindness. And if they're unkind to you, then who gives a shit? Like they can piss off into hell, of course. But this idea of immediately pushing people away, disconnecting from people, that is very unhealthy behavior. In order to be able to have successful relationships with people, you have to work through conflict. And conflict is inevitable. It will happen. And if every time you have conflict, you say, oi, you're like getting on my bad side, you're like bad vibes, bye, I'm never going to talk to you again, blocked. Like, what the hell? How are you going to deal with real life issues? It's so individualistic and it's unhealthy and it's shitty. I hate it.
It's like I said, it's just selfish. You're not a good person for doing that. Like, don't think for 1 second that, you putting yourself first, in these types of situations is healthy at all. It basically just goes to show that you are immature and incapable of being around other people. There was this other trend that was going on where they're like, before you unload any sort of emotional baggage on me, make sure to check in first. So literally, they expected people to text them like, "Hey, are you in the right mental headspace to, take on this rant, or for me to give you a phone call?" What is this like computerized, automated voicemail messaging system? Are you dumb? Are you dumb? Like, you're not gonna have any friends by the end of this. You're gonna be alone and miserable because you've literally shut down everybody in your life.
It's so stupid. I remember those going viral. And there's another one, like your friend be like sending you a message being like, "Oh, I feel like shit today," and then being like, "Hi, I'm not actually in the right headspace. Please contact me at another time." And I'm like, you know what you can say is like, "Hey, I feel shitty too. You want to give me a couple hours? Like, I need to relax, and I'll call you, okay?" And the person will be like, "Okay, we're people. We just have to talk. We're not robots. Are you? What's wrong with you people online?"
They literally made it into like a business transaction. They're like, in 3 to 5 business days, I will get back to you. Thank you for your leaving your message. What? Oh my god, these people must be so annoying to deal with in person. And you know what? You deserve to be alone, and you deserve your shitty day.
You don't deserve friends either.
No. Anyways, because you pretty much touched on a lot of the points that I had, but so they say that's the deadliest of sins, right? Because it's sort of the origin of all the other sins. But for me, like you were saying, it does have its good and its bad. There is a time and place for pride. And for me, I see it as being prideful in your own work. So, you work hard on a project or a presentation or, an assignment even. When you graduate from college or university and you get that diploma or degree, when you secure the job that you've always wanted, you deserve to be prideful. That is hard work that you've put in. That is your own blood, sweat, and tears that made you get to where you are today. So, of course, I'm going to be prideful of my accomplishments, and especially in this dark, cruel world. Let me get dramatic for a second. The whole reality of it is this world continues to crush us down in so many ways, whether it's the economy, whether it's through society, whether it's through unrealistic expectations, whether, there's a plethora of reasons for why society's constantly targeting us, why this world's constantly on our throats. And we deserve to have like a moment of just acknowledgement. So, yeah.
No, I actually really like that, right? A moment of this is mine and I did this. And
Mhm.
I might not have directed a blockbuster, but this is my like accomplishments. I agree to that. And I think those are rare moments where we're allowed to be a little bit prideful and it's okay, to indulge.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's nice. Wow, that was so nice.
Ew. Well, we're getting pretty high up, eh? 3 more.
I'm actually really enjoying this. Okay, so number 3. What's your number 3?
Sorry, I had to breathe. I have a breathing problem. I need to go see a doctor.
I told you, y'all.
That's not the same thing as sleep apnea, okay? This girl thinks I'm getting brain damage every time I go to sleep. I'm not. I only snore once in a while. And that's if I'm really tired.
It was not snoring, Miss Thing. It was an earthquake in there. She was like she nearly popped out my eardrums, ma'am. Do not deceive.
You know what? You know what? Shut up. Anyways.
Oh, it's a good comeback, bud. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead with number 3.
Anyways, I picked greed. And for me, I saw greed as hoarding wealth. So you can think of it as those billionaires, the 1%, those billionaires, the 1%. And for me, I find it very evil when the rest of the world is literally struggling in poverty. There's homelessness, there's starvation, it's endless. And for the life of me, I can't understand why, if like Bill Gates, for example, or Jeff Bezos or whatever, just donated like not even a quarter of the wealth, right? Like just a tiny little bit, redistribute the wealth because you're literally relying on those people to make you rich. So you might as well give back somehow. If they just gave a little bit, maybe our situation wouldn't be so bad. And maybe if the government stopped exploiting us in this economy, we're going through a recession, we're going to go through a depression. I have no one to blame but the government being so greedy in terms of cutting off all our funding. I'm not seeing my tax money anywhere beneficial.
That's right. Mine is different, but it's kind of oddly enough they kind of mirror each other. Mine is gluttony, and I'm perfectly aware what gluttony represents. It's, overeating, over drinking, but for some reason it reeks of consumerism. And consumerism is so ugly. It is so destructive, and we have seen consumerism at its finest, especially in COVID. Consumerism can be so inhumane, and that's the thing about gluttony is it can rob somebody of their humanity. It could be savage, and I think that's really interesting. Is the idea of being gluttonous is just stuffing yourself to the brim for no reason, and it takes away your humanity, right? The idea of sharing. And that's what I could think about is on a global level, consumerism and being gluttonous while others don't have enough to feed their families. That's what's so absolutely sinful about being gluttonous, is not looking to your neighbor, not looking to your friend and thinking, do they need this? Should I share? Should I maybe not be such a pig and reach my hand to others? Yeah, it's so ugly. It's individually ugly, and then it reflects onto a global scale, and it just is like a domino effect. You know what I mean?
So it's funny that you say that. I think between our second and third place, we had it switched. I had number second or number two as gluttony because the way I saw it, I thought it was a lot worse than greed. Because while greed is you're just hoarding wealth, like okay, khalas, that's your money, that's your business. You know what I mean? Like it's really shitty of you to hoard all that, but you know what? You want to say you worked hard for it. I don't have the right to take that. With gluttony, it's not only consumerism, but for the individual person, but it's also just consuming everything, whether it's land, whether it's tax wealth. You're constantly taking away from somebody else because you're too busy indulging. You're too busy, I guess like the traditional sense is you're constantly eating and eating and eating, but you can apply that to anything. So my thing is, you're not only consuming, you're taking away from somebody else.
That's okay. So that's a little bit funny because my number two is greed. Like we said, we have ours switched. And for me, greed is what you just described. It's taking away from others. So greed translated in Arabic is jesha. And I love the word jesha because you know what it is? You know what greed is? On an individual level, it's like fighting with your own blood over inheritance. That's greed, right? That's like on an individual level. And then on a global level, it's just capitalism. It's this big monster that demands more constantly with never dishing out anything to anybody else. What greed represents to me is, I guess, what gluttony represents to you. But greed, I literally imagine on this tiny little global scale of like somebody who is hungry for money, who's willing to watch their loved ones starve because they're greedy. And then a global scale is Jeff Bezos having enough billions to literally end starvation 3 times over, 4 times over, 5 times over, and never doing so and continuing the cycle of poverty. It's so evident in everything we do. And even in our own work environments, we see greed, corporate greed. People's lives are lost when they're working 9 to 5 to keep their families well and alive, and they have a sick day and they have to like call and give a detailed explanation of why they can't come into work. It's so disgusting. Corporate greed is repulsive to me. And greed is, I think, the source of a lot of human conflict throughout time. It's been about this land is mine, this land is yours. And it's greed, right? When you look, for example, at the Roman Empire, it was take, 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 kill, 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 and claim the land. And it was seen as power. That's what's scary about greed, is that it's typically associated with power, which is then makes power seem like it's a sin when not necessarily, right? Like having power is supposed to be a good thing, is empowerment, it's beautiful. It has been attached to greed. When you are greedy, you are powerful. Therefore, the only way I'll survive is if I'm greedy. And it continues the cycle of abuse of, fuck it, I'll do whatever it takes so that I can get my bag. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep being inhuman. I'm going to keep basically wasting away until I get that bag. That's what greed represents to me. Sorry, I went on a tangent, but I feel like I'm really passionate about this.
No, I love it. I think you could also see greed in dictators a lot of the times, especially in the Arab world, where I mean, I don't want to again. Wow, I've been so controversial. First with Prince Charles, and now with
What is wrong with you and royal families and dictators? Oh, first of all, the fact that you said being controversial to not liking dictators, that's so upsetting. We have to give disclaimers.
Anyways, you see it a lot with dictators, and especially in the Arab world, where dictators refuse, and I guess that's the whole essence of what a dictator is. These presidents refuse to step down, even when the whole country hates them. They have no love from their people, and it's bizarre to think, like, why do you want to rule a country that does not want you? Like, I feel like when people are in power, they love the affection and the love, like they feed off of that at some level, or at least, like, with like fear, like a little bit included. It's fear, but it's also filled with hate, and that's a very dangerous combination because the minute anybody gets a chance, you're a goner, which as history has shown, big facts. So with greed, they have this love for power, and they're just so obsessed with their position and taking and consuming and just keeping that wealth within the family that they're too blind to see what their actual citizens want or don't care enough to go through with it.
Right. It's God is like controls us, and it's upsetting because it's the few who benefit, and then the rest are just stomped on.
Yeah. Okay, ready for the last one?
I'm so excited for number one. So I guess obviously by process of elimination, we know. So my number one is wrath. Iragad, what's your number one?
Envy.
That's so funny to me.
Yeah,
Yeah, envy was my least. Yeah. So I guess we can start. Do you mind if I start?
by all means, go.
The reason I want to start is because I think mine is a bit of a given now, and I'm really curious to hear about envy. But I can go over it. I guess anger to me is the root feeling that we have, is that this root emotion that is very primal. And the idea of wrath is this not just being disgruntled or being frustrated. Wrath is the amount of rage that you have. It's so strong that it pushes you into action, and not just any action, but radical action. And throughout history, human wrath has proved to be absolutely destructive. And I think what's interesting is we were talking about earlier about these deadly sins and how you would rate them because it relates to you personally. When I think of wrath, I think of war. And war is something that I grew up witnessing. It's something that is a part of my identity as a Palestinian. So, inevitably, as a child, I understood what wrath can do and what wrath can cause. And it's always been very scary to me. Anger. My family isn't really, I've never like, I don't want to sound pompous, but I was very fortunate to have a family that deals with conflict through conversation. And even if it's like in a fight, I've never seen wrath. And the few times in my life that I had, I'm usually a pretty quick person when I respond to things. When I see anger, I freeze. I don't know why. It's almost like a trigger to me. And when I see people very angry, especially using violence, I don't react well. I kind of shut down. And that has happened before when I've seen wrath with people that I love. It ended up affecting me in a way that I didn't know was possible because I've never witnessed it before. And I froze, and it was fear down to my bones. That's why wrath is number one for me, is because personally, it's one of my biggest fears in people. I fear people that are angry, even though I'm an angry person. And when I say angry, I'm angry for causes, right? Like, I can get very aggressive when I talk about the things that I love or care about. But when I see anger that is very self-indulged anger, I guess you can say anger that is wrongly directed, it just cripples me with fear. And then I see it on a global scale where anger and wrath has caused wars and destruction, never ending destruction, to people who are just citizens, are just everyday people paying the price for the wrath of people in power. And that's why wrath is number one for me. That's my pitch. Iraga, tell me, I want to know why envy is number one for you. I'm super curious.
Wow. First of all, that's a very interesting outlook. It seems like very personal to you, and I definitely see where you're coming from because I'm the same way. When I see anger or wrath in person, my heart like just freezes because I don't know what that person's capable of at that point. I've had so many instances where it's not even personal for me. It's with strangers. Like, okay, every time I go to Toronto, for example, there's always something that happens. Okay, I don't know what breed of people live in Toronto. Like the first time that I went there, I saw a homeless man rob Tim Hortons, and he waved at me like it was no big deal, and I waved back. I was like, I'm minding my business. Second time I went, I remember I was walking with my friends, and there were these two people, a man and a woman. The woman like had like a camera in front of this man's face, and I thought they were like at least married or something. Like they had like some sort of relationship, but we were walking behind them, and they were screaming at the top of their lungs to the point where literally everybody was clearing the path for them. She ended up taking like a paint can or something that she had on her and like whipping it at him, and he was screaming at the top of his voice. And we're like obviously eavesdropping. Like literally everybody like froze in the streets, and we realized they don't know each other at all. I don't know what the reasoning was. Maybe they had a good reason, who knows? But I'm sorry, anger is at that level is never justified because it's not going to lead to anything positive at the end, you know? So I remember just literally like freezing in place, just watching this kind of all unravel and like wondering, I'm like, are they gonna flip over to me now? Like, I know that's probably not realistic, but who knows? Like, she's done yelling at him. Now everybody else is in her way. It's scary. So, to kind of,
Yeah, no, I agree. It's hella scary when you see on the street because you're like, am I next? You get all defensive. You're like, I try to remember like self-defense moves that you learned in high school. Horrifying.
which I don't remember any. Like, I remember seeing so many, like, favoriting them on Twitter, and I'm like, I can't even, like, hold a 3 pound dumbbell, okay? I'm so weak. It's not funny.
It's futile. At least you have them saved in case you need them.
Right, in case like somebody comes to me, I'm like, oh, 1 second, please, while I pull out my phone and recap this 3 minute video. It's just not feasible for me. Okay, so for me, my first place has to go to envy. It's because I believe that it truly is the root of all evil. I feel like it's a huge motivator behind a lot of the sins that we mentioned. When you start to put your happiness on the misery of others or what you cannot have, that leads you to taking heinous actions sometimes. So it's one of those things where no matter what you do, your happiness will never be attainable because you are a miserable human being. You are constantly relying on the fact that somebody, like, you having what you have is never good enough. You're always going to be miserable looking at somebody else. And like I touched on earlier, depending on what you believe in your culture and religion, this factor comes up and it's the evil eye. So a lot of the times people claim that the evil eye has destroyed their lives. And take it with a grain of salt. I don't think everything is due to the evil eye, but I personally do believe in some of it. And I've heard horror stories and, people purposely keeping their accomplishments a secret, which just sucks. You should be able to comfortably talk about it and, be proud of where you've been or how far you've come. But people are so scared of, getting cursed by the evil eye, having, their possessions taken or destroyed or whatever it is. And I was reading up on it and it was described as a disease of the soul. So it's not good enough that simply you don't have something. It's the fact that somebody else has it.
I think that's the silver lining, right? Is not only do I want this, I wish you wouldn't have this. Yes, of course. That's a very good point. Okay.
Yeah, and oh yeah, and I was reading up on it and somebody kind of stated that envy is the least fun of all the sins because you can think of it like with all the other sins, they're more self-indulgent. So for example, like pride, you're so happy with yourself. Lust, you're indulging in like your true desires. With gluttony, you're consuming. Greed, you're getting out of it. Like with envy, there's no benefit towards you. You're just empty because nothing will ever satisfy you. There's this one German philosopher. I'm not even gonna pretend to try to say his name. Actually, you know what? Let's try it. Schopenhauer. I don't know. Copenhauer, maybe. I don't know. It starts with an S. So, anyways, he called it the worst trait in human nature because it's akin to cruelty. And to feel envy is human, but to indulge in such malicious joy is fiendish and diabolical because your pleasure derives from another person's misfortune. So, that's kind of how I see it and I agree with it. Yeah.
I didn't think about it that way at all. For me, I just thought about it as jealousy, but it's obviously very layered.
Yeah, exactly.
And I failed to see that. Well done on that.
Thank you.
Is she intelligent? Wow, what a twist.
Don't let this squeaky voice fool you.
The squeaky voice was the least of my problems. Wow, this was really fun. I really enjoyed this, huh? This discourse was really fun.
I enjoy not necessarily debating because I do have an anger problem when it comes to, discussing opinions. As much as we discussed how big of a sin it all is, I can't deal with stupid opinions, but I don't mind having a conversation as long as the person's open-minded.
Yeah, an open-minded individual with a different new perspective is okay. A person with a stupid opinion with a shitty perspective, not okay. I don't give a shit about you. Take your opinion and shove it where the sun don't shine. I don't care.
Oh, tell it how it is.
Yes. She's wrathful, clearly.
Oh, actually, what sin would you say? I mean, I guess you kind of said it. Would you relate to wrath out of all the 7 sins?
No, the fucking sloth, dude. I don't get my shit done. I'm a sloth.
Okay. That's good for you.
What about you? Don't pick one that's cool.
Cool. I have no money to be greedy. I have no ambition right now during Ramadan to be gluttonous.
We have no prospects to be lustful.
Exactly. Where is this coming from? I guess for me, I guess I would go with wrath or anger. I do have my moments where I just see red, so
I guess the rarity of it is very interesting too, right? Wrath is like when you meet people that are really calm and they snap, and then you're like, oh, I wish I'd never seen this. People when they snap, they're so frightening, especially the calm ones or the funny ones.
yeah, I have this thing where I cry when I'm angry and it can't stop. And it's not like I'm so upset by the situation. It's just my emotions take over. And don't get me, I'm not like trying to paint myself as this like walking Hulk where I'm just constantly being triggered. I'm not. It's just certain situations where I like, actually, I don't want to like keep going and then just like paint myself in this negative image. So I'm just going to call it a day.
Wow, now you having an agenda. No, being angry is scary as hell. I always say this. A while ago, I was going through a rough time mentally, and it was the first time in my life that I like snapped that way, and I grabbed a plate and I threw it. And whenever I discuss this now with like friends or family, when I'm talking about that time in my life, I'm like, oh yeah, I had my angry white college boy moment. Because you know how like angry little white guys and like, fraternities are always punching holes in walls? I like never experienced that until that day. And I was like, oh, I get it now. But like, y'all are living like this? Like, this is you 24/7? It's a lot of work. It takes effort to be pissed off that much.
Who's paying for these walls? And also, with technology, there's always going to be some sort of failure with it, like whether it's your computer shutting down or lost work. I don't take too kindly to that. I know some people are like, patience, whatever. I lose my shit. Like, I literally want to smash my laptop. I want to break everything around me. I don't because it's so expensive. I already stepped on my laptop once and I had to pay $500 to fix it. And for me, I have quick outbursts, but I try not to let it pile up because I rather just like explode for like 5 minutes, whether it's, and you know what? I'm usually angry all by myself. There's nobody around. So I'm just in my room, just like overheating and sweating for no reason. But yeah, I try not to let it pile up because when you do have that moment of release, there's a small chance that you might lose whoever you're exploding on.
Yeah, it's not worth it. Yeah, I'm also one of those people. I also like to, if I'm angry, I like go in my room, I fume, I cry maybe, and then I'm okay. And then I can talk. And I love that about us. It's actually really nice. It's just like, yeah, anger is natural, but what's natural is taking care of it and knowing how to treat it and not punching in holes in college dorm walls. Stop it. What did I say about that, Matthew? I'm going to call your mother. Bethany's going to hear about this. Hi, Bethany.
My word.
Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode. This was really fun, a fun discourse that Raghan and I had, and we really hope to pass it on to you, and you can have this discourse, this conversation with your friends and family. So that's it from us, the Expired Musing Gals. Please make sure to give our other episodes a listen on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and many others, also YouTube. And make sure to follow us on Expired Musings Podcast on both TikTok and Instagram. And that's it. Thank you guys so much. We love you.
Love you.
See you later.
Bye.